Hello and welcome to this very special program. Cloud computing is something that's been a buzzword for quite some time. A lot of people don't understand it. Is it just a jargon for something that has been around for a long time? Is cloud computing something that's actually going to change the way consumers go about their day-to-day work? Is it going to change the way small businesses function? Is it something that is going to change the way the government relates to its own people? How big is it, and what do we really need to do to understand cloud computing a bit better? Well, in this special program that we put together in partnership with Microsoft, we're going to try and answer some of the questions. I'd like to welcome onto the program, first of all, the Minister of State for Communication and IT, Sachin Pilot, who has really been pioneering a lot of changes in the way the government communicates with its own people, and we're going to be asking you whether this is going to be one aspect of you. It gives us great pleasure to have you on this program. Sanket Akerkar, Managing Director, Microsoft India, it's great to have you with us as well. And I'm going to be asking you why some of the 800-pound gorillas of the IT space want to really tear up their business models, if indeed that is what you're doing, or is this a threat to you? And Ravindra Jain, CIO of Aircel Cellular, great to have you with us as well. As a user, you can perhaps tell us whether it is going to make an impact or not. But Sachin, why don't I just start with you? Cloud computing and different ways of doing business, is this something that the ministry has had in mind for a while?
Well, I think these are developments that have happened over the years, and with the internet-based applications now really taking on a life of its own, it really now, I think, to my mind, is going to pave way for people, for consumers, for small businesses, for entrepreneurs to be able to access the best quality products and applications that are out there at quite reasonable costs, because large corporations can have the resources to be deployed to be able to get those facilities and programs and applications. But what about those people who live in tier 3, tier 4 cities, in small villages? They don't have the money to spend and buy this kind of programming and software. So this really is, I think, a freedom given to the consumers. It much will depend upon how the market reacts to it. We from the government side have been quite technology agnostic. And to my mind, what is more important is that the people in India, in the whole country, the internet penetration today is about 8%. So for us to be able to really proliferate internet usage all over the country, including having real-time e-governance become a reality, perhaps cloud computing is going to be a very, very important factor.
Okay, great. So we are going to now, just to set up the way we are going to go about for the next 40-45 minutes, we're going to try and understand what exactly cloud computing is. We're going to look at various categories of users and see how it may affect them. And we look at some of the advantages and the disadvantages. And I am going to ask that question about connectivity at some point and whether you can really use cloud computing everywhere. Sangeet, why don't I get you to just run us through what is cloud computing?
Well, I think the best way to sort of describe it is probably from a consumer perspective. And so I think as consumer, we've all used the internet now, hopefully for many, many years. And really the model we've gotten accustomed to is what I would call click to run. Right? So you're in a browser, you press a button, and things just run. And you just get the experience of a service, an internet-based service, that feels familiar and is easy to use. And that's just sort of something that from a Microsoft perspective, we've provided for the last 10 plus years with Hotmail and Messenger and Xbox Live services. And so that now paradigm is something that becomes much more important and interesting to businesses and commercial entities.
So let me just try to understand this. What we are talking about out here is that a lot of applications, a lot of services that till now companies do in-house with their in-house IT departments, or which consumers do by buying a shrink-wrapped application, running it on their computer. Now you're saying those applications and services can be delivered from a remote location via the internet. Is that the key difference?
That is one of the key differences. I think it's a fundamental difference. The other thing is in terms of then how that technology gets used, right? So the ability to only pay for what you use, the ability to have a subscription, the ability to be able to scale and move things up. If you want to say, I want to use a service for 1 day or a week or 2 months, you can do that and you can turn it off. All those things become very, very interesting from a cloud computing.
So pay-per-use is something that's very possible out here. Is that one of the major attractions of this, that you don't have to buy an expensive application? You can just use it when you want to?
I guess so. Especially for the small, medium enterprises, that model really works very well, because you need not to really set up the entire IT services at your backend and then maintain it, manage it, and spend a lot of capex in it. Here, what you can do is hire the services either the software or the infrastructure or the platform as per your requirement on demand. Like it is something like sachization of your IT services. That makes the life a lot more easier, and you need not to really worry where these services are being delivered to. It doesn't matter whether the servers are hosted in US or in India or anywhere else in the world. All you are concerned about is the services that you are getting. Cloud has been there for quite some time. Like it is kind of a new, it's an old wine in the new bottle. Like earlier we used to label it as shared services or virtualization. Now, but this time when cloud comes back, it comes back with all the other technology barrier that were there earlier. All have been taken care. Like security was a major concern earlier. Why would an enterprise put their business data somewhere outside? Security is a major concern. But now that has been taken care. The technology really enables you to take care of the security, the management, the benchmarking, everything. So it makes more sense.
Vikram, I think one of the key differences that we were just highlighting is one is that it's pay as you go. So it's quite economical for every incremental use that the companies and individuals do. But also what is very important is that in technology, redundancies are quite very quick. So what you use today, perhaps 2 years later or even 1 year later, you may not want to, you want to upgrade, for example. So all your investments are going into technological upgradation, which sometimes you can avoid. So especially for companies which have limited resources, they can deploy those resources to get better manpower, high skilled people to do the jobs. So technology upgradation and redundancies are very, very important from the cost perspective.
And they themselves don't have to worry about things like what operating system am I using,
Absolutely.
what version of the software there is. Someone else is taking care of it.
I can give a very good analogy, Vikram. It's like when you buy a brand new car from the showroom and you drive it to the house, you drive very carefully, you spend time and money and you keep scrubbing and rubbing and making sure it shines and looks very good, as opposed to hiring a car for 1 week of travel. You get a very good car and you look after it, but after you're done with 7 days of use, you give it back to the car rental and then you're stress-free. So that's the same sort of way.
But in that example, it sometimes works out to more expensive. And you said, it's like what you get in sachets. But in sachets, the shampoo that you get in sachets or the washing powder that you get in sachets tends to be more expensive gram for gram than something you're getting in a big package. So does this work out to be more expensive or less expensive?
Not really.
No,
in fact, one has to look at the requirement. If I need to use a sachet of 5 milligram, why would I really go and buy a bottle of 1 liter and then store it as an inventory for quite some time? So if it really depends upon what kind of requirement you have. If you have a small requirement and a temporary requirement, then pay-per-use model is best.
I guess one of the big advantages of the sachets is that it does take shampoo, for example, to a range of people who otherwise would not normally buy shampoo. So in this case, is that the major attraction for you as minister in this, that there are people who would not perhaps be able to afford certain types of IT services if they had to do it entirely in-house, but now they can.
From the ministry, we do a lot of these workshops. We want to encourage capacity building and make sure that companies are, using software and applications to streamline their businesses, make them more competitive. And the biggest complaint I've heard this far is that the smaller companies don't have the money to invest in their own individual, separate, linear IT infrastructure. And they say that, how does government help them? So we do give them some subsidies, set up incubation centers, kind of give them that feel of how it can benefit the best businesses. But the bottom line is money. So in the sachet example, the investments are low, and it may be, like you said, issues of how people who never had access to shampoos are getting shampoos because it's available in a sachet. But look at the cost you save in terms of, depreciated values, in terms of how each person is able to use and then move on to the next technology. And as businesses grow, you will find that issues such as standards, security, they have been taken care of to a large extent. I don't think all of them are out of the window yet, but to a large extent, the major issues and concerns have been addressed satisfactorily. That's why I'm quite confident that this new wave in the next 2 or 3 years will really impact India and economies like India in a very positive fashion.
And the other thing, just to add on the sachet example, is exactly that now you can bring the sachet or the IT services to the person who didn't have any IT and could do it before. But the other thing that's really important is to think about, we can now take those services that the highest, largest, most complex enterprise organizations have been using for many years and bring that down to someone who doesn't have any IT. So they can experience that very, very high quality service, which they couldn't get to before, but now they get that full power without having to invest
So,
a
so
ton of
if
money.
a small company, in other words, wanted to, even if they wanted to set up their own IT, they certainly wouldn't have the economies of scale to do the best possible stuff. Now they can.
Exactly. That's exactly
That's
right.
a big advantage.
And
That's
the,
right.
and the upfront investment is very, very high, if you want to set up your own IT infrastructure. And as he mentioned that, obsolescence really plays very, very heavy on you. So with this kind of a model, you need not to really worry about obsolescence. You need not to worry about upfront investment. And you keep earning and you keep paying.
Okay, I am going to come to how various different users actually could benefit or not benefit from this, from consumers to businesses to e-governance and things like that. But before I do any of that, let me just come with one of the first big question marks that I have, and that of course is connectivity. This is not the United States. There are a lot of people who still don't have internet everywhere, who may not have stable internet connections. If they've gone out and bought Microsoft Word or Excel or any other application, it doesn't matter, it's on the computer, you can use it. If you're dependent on the net and your internet connection goes down, then you're really in a soup, aren't you?
Yeah, no, you are. And I think, I think it's fair to say, even from a worldwide basis, no one has 100% connectivity all the time, right? So you will still always need a scenario where you need to get access to that information or get access to the applications, and you'll have to be in an unconnected state, and you will be able to do that. From a Microsoft perspective, we provide that today, the unconnected state, and then we're also saying, hey, we can provide that in a connected state, and those two experiences are the same.
But what if somebody is buying a connected state application? Well, that's the whole point. You're going in for cloud computing and you want a solution. But is there a backup in case your net is down?
There are scenarios where that can work, especially from a business perspective. So I think on a consumer perspective, it can be a little bit more challenging, because you wouldn't say a consumer is going to probably build a infrastructure inside their house or their car or whatever it might be. But for businesses, there are options to build some of that technology, even for small businesses, inside their own infrastructure, and then also have that be similar to what they can provide on the cloud. So there are ways to do that.
Right. Sachin, is it cart before the horse? Till you get broader connectivity, better broadband, more internet everywhere, and maybe it's going to happen now. I mean, there is 3G is coming, BW is coming, this could be the inflection point. But till that happens, will this not really take off?
Well, I think you identified the fundamental requirement is to have great high-speed connectivity, and unless you have that as a basis, all of this will not really come to fruition. But you really can't wait for 100% coverage connectivity all over India for even these kind of cloud computing concepts to take off, because it takes a lot of time to get consumer confidence. You iron out the problems and the teething issues that are there with any new system that people are using. But I can show you the next year and a half or 2 years, you'll have such a pan-India presence of really high speed, because now applications are data hungry. And the dichotomy, Vikram, is that as a telephone mobile service provider or a connectivity provider, I'm concerned about how much data is going through my systems. But the people who are developing the applications don't really care. So they're putting in terabytes and gigabytes of application and data coming through that pipeline. But who's paying for that? The other issue is then, how do you get charged? Because the service provider is the one who bears the cost and may pass it on to the consumers. So we, from the government point of view, are very careful and conscious about not having the costs become unbearable, because unless the costs are reasonable, like what happened to mobile telephoning, the call rates came down, the handset rates came down. Similarly for internet, the devices have to be cheap, connectivity has to be good quality but not very expensive, and only then we will have the kind of penetration of internet as we are all hoping we will have in the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, as somebody who's rolling out 3G, how is it going?
Well,
when are we going to get the sort of internet connectivity?
Well, 3G is already the reality. Many players have already rolled out. And in fact, Vikram, connectivity is definitely an issue. We are information and infrastructure starved country. However, the larger issue to deal with at this point in time is not the technology, but the mindset. It's a mindset of putting your information, your business assets somewhere outside in a cloud which is virtual, which is not even visible, and suddenly there's a whole lot of mindset plays on your on your decision making. It's just like how many of us really put our valuable assets in a locker. Not many people. People do not feel very comfortable. Though the locker system is very much safe, secure. It provides you all kind of services. 24/7. You can go and withdraw all your assets at any point in time. But not not many people really feel comfortable. So the concept has been around. There were lots of barrier, and the largest barrier that we have is a mindset. Once we deal with, as Sachin said rightly, you know, the consumer and the enterprises need to feel more comfortable with the technology, and as we go forward, all these connectivity issues with broadband coming in, 3G kicking in, everything will be taken care. May not be 100%, but to a very large extent.
Right. The bank locker example is an interesting one. Maybe another example of this could be actually putting your money into a bank account, because you've theoretically put your money into the bank account, but after that it's part of a common pool on which you have a charge.
Yeah, that's right. I think the key thing that we see as one of the big drivers is infrastructure utilization. Right, a lot of companies have built all these server farms and they run at less than 20% utilization. And so there's tons of capacity out there that's being unused, and really sort of drives the need for, let's pool it all together and let's put lots of people on the same hardware, and therefore we will be able to pass those savings down to the customer.
What's in it for companies who are behind this? I mean, a company like yours, for example, seeing as you were dominating, in a sense, the OS and other models, why are you so keen that something like this should take off?
Well, I think there's a couple
Or is it
reasons.
just realizing this is the trend, so we better be with it?
Well, so I think the way to think about it is it's been a long journey for us, right? So from a consumer perspective, we've been on the cloud for 15 years, right? So we think about Hotmail, we think about Messenger, we think about Xbox Live. Those are services we've run for more than 10 years and have been worldwide in terms of presence, right? So the experience of running consumer services in a cloud is something that we've done very, very well. What we've seen is in the last 5, 6, 7 years, commercial businesses be more interested in thinking about how do we leverage that sort of consumer model and framework into their operations. And so we're betting that change will happen on a whole-scale basis from a business perspective, and that's the investment we're making.
So, Sachin, leading on from that, is this something which is really new? Because to some extent, cloud computing, or as we call virtual computing a little earlier, has been around for a while, and from a consumer's point of view, there are lots of consumers who use Flickr, for example, or Gmail, and you could argue that's also cloud computing to some extent.
Well, like it's been said before, it's been around for a long time, but circumstances have to come all in one place to make sure that the technology and the application really take off. And now is a time where India as a country is quite young, the literacy rates are high, people are more aware, they're demanding information and entertainment like never before. And now we have the companies and the entities who can do all that for us at quite reasonable rates. So we've had this BWA auction, like you said, 3G has now become a reality. So everything has to fall into place for something to really become from an idea to reality. And as we all know, 2011-12, I think are going to be crucial years for us to be able to break that. So this concept has been around for a long time, but adaptation to it, availability, and acceptability, those three factors have now come together right about now.
Remember, if you have any questions on this, just send them in to us to @NDTV, and we will try and get some of those questions answered. We've already got a couple of questions here. What is, here's a question from Mayank. He asks, what is the business case for using cloud computing? Would you like to take that?
I would say the cost, the reducing cost, better speed to market is the largest business case. Let me give you one example, like music. We love entertainment, like in India, everyone likes to watch movies and listen to the music. Now, if you have a favorite music on one of the device, and you are going to your workplace and you want to listen to the music, then that music is not available at your work. Or if you are sitting in your car, that music is not available in your car. But with cloud computing kicking in, you can actually have your favorite music on the cloud and then listen to that music anywhere, everywhere, whenever you want. So that's one advantage, which is ease and on the move, you have the information as well as your own favorite entertainment. Second is, as I said, speed to market. Once you don't worry about the infrastructure, the IT infrastructure, which is already built at the back end, all you have to do is just bring your services, put in, and all those services are available to the large consumer. App Store is the biggest example. So speed to market is one of the business case.
Okay, here's another question from Smriti Das. She says, if many clients have their data in the same infrastructure, how do you ensure data is compartmentalized and is not compromised? Actually, that's a very good question. Security. how do you make sure if there are two competitors who have it in the same infrastructure, that the information doesn't leak?
Yeah, so there's a variety of technical solutions that can do that. I'll say a lot of people who have created cloud services have solved it differently. So there's some providers that don't allow that sort of container for your data to be solid and will allow data to sort of move back and forth, and that they can get economies of scale for that, and there's a lower price point for that. So it's a sort of different value proposition. And then there's a little bit of a higher proposition that says, okay, we're going to encapsulate that data, make it secure, give you a bit more of a dedicated offering, and then that will be a higher price point, a little bit more service, if security and that's important to you. So right now on the consumer side, you'll never know where your data or your email is. On the business side, a business may want that, and that can be solved from a number of technology solutions.
You wouldn't be concerned about the security aspects of this?
Well, I think depends on the business. If you're just a regular citizen who has an email account, I don't think security is that big an issue. But yes, privacy issues, your identity.
Tapping of private information has become quite an issue in recent months.
Exactly. But no, in terms of just using cloud computing for a normal person, I think it's not that high on the priority. But if you're a company that has competing business interest in some other companies in the same systems, of course, if you're government, you want to make sure that if you're using any parts of cloud computing in any parts of the country or departments in the ministries, then security, stable environment, theft, all those are very important issues. But I think different companies...
for example, for those reasons, see the government using it. I mean, you've seen what happened with WikiLeaks and the Americans. Wouldn't the government be worried that if you're putting all our data on cloud computing, who's to make sure that someone doesn't siphon it off?
Well, let me tell you, Vikram, there are no 100% airtight, ways to contain data. It's digitized, so it's possible for people who have tendencies to tap into something. They'll find a way to do it sooner or later. But we have to just make sure that we do our best to make sure that people have that sense of security. Okay. Because for businesses, especially for companies in India who are doing things like BPO and data processing, for them information, medical records, credit card information, those are very, very important. And we have laws in this country that are quite stringent now. So the IT Amendment Act of 2010 is a very, very strong piece of legislation which gives the consumers and companies the sovereign right to have data privacy. And you have to make sure that even if you are doing cloud computing, someone at the end of the day is made responsible if there is pilferage or leakage of data.
If you can figure out who's to blame,
yeah.
Because sometimes it's not easy.
And Vikram, when you run it as a business, cloud computing as a business, I am sure the responsibility lies on that business house to ensure that it is
yes.
safe and secure. What is the probability of looting a locker in the bank than a house? One can really get the answer.
So somebody can come in and take the data away from your computer at home, or if you don't have a good firewall as a company.
It is a lot more easier,
I'll say that the technology is farther along than mindset. I think, and you mentioned that a little bit while ago. I mean, we've got customers like GlaxoSmithKline, Nokia, Coca-Cola, Starbucks, that their entire collaboration suites on Microsoft's data centers. Those are, if you think about GlaxoSmithKline as a global pharmaceutical company, they have a ton of IP that's very, very proprietary, especially that's going through email. We've made them comfortable in terms of what's possible. Many other vendors can do that as well, right, and be able to provide that level of security. Customers are going to need to get more familiar and comfortable that's possible to be solved from a technology standpoint.
But just to play devil's advocate, Vikram, he mentioned about the locker example. That's a good example. But there are people who use the sewage lines and drill through the road to tap into the ATMs. So people do end up stealing and finding ways to maneuver around the systems. But we can't stop progression of technologies because of some apparent misuse that may happen in the future. We have to mitigate those challenges, but still have to carry on.
All right, I'm going to take that break now, and then when we come back, some of the myths around cloud computing, and also who are the people who really do stand to benefit. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to this special discussion where we are looking at cloud computing, which is perhaps a major trend that gets high-powered computer applications and services into the hands of a lot of people who don't have them quite yet. Sachin, I just wanted to come back to you on the question of e-governance now. And one of the big questions that you're, of course, grappling with is how do we bridge the digital divide? So we were talking about how, to one extent, the digital divide between big corporations and small corporations can be bridged with cloud computing, because even the smaller companies can access it. What happens to e-governance and issues like that? Can those be benefited by this at all, or is it not relevant?
Well, I think so, certainly, because the cost advantages, the ease with which it can be used are certainly going to add to the acceptability. And e-governance will only become a reality when people start adapting to digitized services. If I live in a small village and I want my land records, I have to get a physical hard copy and I have to take 50 rounds to the tehsil and to the district headquarter and beg 50 people to sign off on something. But if all of that data is available...
And pay bribes to them also.
Sometimes, perhaps. But if I want all of that on a click of a button, it saves my time, it's efficient, it's transparent. And e-governance is not just about giving government services, but it's also giving people the education, telemedicine, all of that can become really, because it's not just about connectivity, what we talked about earlier. And I keep emphasizing this time and again that people, companies, and individuals have to create software applications that are in the regional languages. They have to be in Kannada, Tamil, Bengali, whatever language people speak. Because in India, you can't think that all of India will start using the internet because it's in Hindi and English. 60% of India does not speak these two languages. So software applications have to be developed that can be hosted on the cloud, and then people can tap into it. So all these things have to work in parallel movement, whether it's connectivity, whether it's the deployment of the cloud computing concepts, and then the and software that reside in it, and then make sure people are, it has to be demand driven. The challenge for these companies, by the way, is not to give services and provide infrastructure. It is to create that demand in the 20 or 50 or 100 million population that is so far untouched by e-governance and by internet and by handheld devices. So once we go wireless, you will see a phenomenal jump in the increase in the usage and deployment of services. And once people start realizing the benefits of it, then there's nothing stopping it. You will see the way governments interface with the citizens will have a paradigm shift. And I think that's real empowerment. It's not about letting people know on television, what's out there. It's giving the power in their hands. And young people are eager to adapt to that.
Okay, I'm just seeing Sanket's looking very happy that you're the IT minister. I think you would agree with a lot of that. What he was saying about vernacular, I think that's a really, really crucial point. Because if all of this has to really work, you've got to start getting those applications, whether they're on the cloud or not, to people in the language that they actually use.
Yeah.
And it's not just English and Hindi.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think in order to get the adoption, the usage, the familiarity, it has to be easy for people to interact. It has to be in the local language. And that's something that we've been investing in from our resources here in India in terms of making sure we have as many Indian languages covered as we can.
That's something which has almost been neglected. If you really look at it, if you compare China with India, I think that 18 of the top 20 Chinese internet companies are actually in Chinese language, right? And in India, there are hardly any. It's all English, the internet out here so far.
But that awareness has been there in the large enterprise, and like we know that we have an app store where we are now trying to convert most of the applications in the vernacular or regional languages. And voice will be the largest medium, to access any kind of application. So we are also ensuring that the consumer is comfortably able to access the application over the voice rather than the text or any other medium. So vernacular would be one of the driving factor.
So is it, Sachin, going to be a two-stage process? First, moving it from offline to online, which is, let's say, the digitization of land records, and then using cloud computing and other methods to really spread it?
I think so. And the progression seems quite natural in that sense. The other thing that he mentioned is quite important, because today the mobile market, 94% of it is in voice. So we'll have a very quick turnover into the data, information, entertainment. But a lot of people in India perhaps are illiterate. And I think this voice-activated software, and I know of this pilot project going on in a state in India, where the Narega payments are made through a handheld device. And because some of these people can't read or write, but they know that the red button is to switch off the phone and the green button is to put the phone on. And there is this application which is voice activated. It will tell you how much money has been deposited or credited or withdrawn. I think these are all innovative ideas because this is the demand of the market. It's quite a thin profit margin, but a huge volume market that we have in India. Nice. And Indian people are quite innovative in adapting to technologies. as long as it's within their reach. They have to just make sure that the mindset changes. And I believe personally, this whole IT thing in India has been kind of created as a concept for the elite. People who only have laptops and wear fancy suits are the ones who should deal with IT. We have to break the mindset, make it vernacular, make it voice activated, make it cheap, put it out in the villages. And e-governance is not about playing video games and taking printouts. E-governance is how we can better the life of the last man living in a village who doesn't have to go to Pune, Bombay or Delhi to enter into the IT sphere.
And will the UID make a big difference in this?
Absolutely. Once you have that UID, once you have the e-governance in place, once you have government services, people will just absolutely discover the true value of what technology can change. And it will transform not just people's mindsets, but I think people's lives. And young people, education, facilities, hospitals, all of that will you have to have virtual presence. 5% of the villages in India have banks today. 60% of the people who use mobile handsets are unbanked. Mobile banking, open wallet, all these are going to become concepts that are going to change and usher India into the new decade. And that's when we can say that we are in the forefront of the countries that are forging ahead. And India is rightly placed to be amongst the top 5, 6.
Right, great. Let me just take some more questions, including perhaps some of the myths and the facts behind cloud computing that are coming in. But here's, this gentleman's not given his name, but I suspect he's an IT professional. He says, what is going to be the impact of this on companies' IT departments? Are a lot of people going to lose their jobs?
That's a question that we get quite a bit, and I know a lot of people say, hey, we're going to implement this technology, what can it do? We've actually found that isn't the case. What it ends up doing is it starts changing the question that you ask, right? So it's not about keeping the infrastructure running, but it's now what can I do on this infrastructure? How can I be more productive? What can I get out of the infrastructure to make things work better? And one of the things, actually, one of the statistics...
Is this guy losing his job or no?
We hope, no. I think his job may change, right, into something that gets into driving more productivity and using the technology in a different and better way. So we've actually seen the ratio to be, for every dollar that we put in, we see about $160 of new services associated to cloud computing that get generated as sort of ancillary elements.
And just to add what he
said,
said,
CIO jobs are secure.
Very well. All the typical classic IT professionals will be transformed to a business IT professionals. So just to add.
Well, here's another question which is rather interesting. What if a company's data is hosted on a server which is in a politically hostile country, example Libya? How does one protect such data? There's a question from Sanjay Singh. I'm not completely sure why you would want to put your data into Libya, but just in case you were.
It really does not matter, which country or where your data is residing. If your law permits to keep your data and storage somewhere out in Libya, very well, absolutely no problem. It is the way you access and it is the way you secure your data over there.
And presumably it will be mirrored, so if it goes down...
It will be mirrored, of course. He talked about redundancy, and that is, that would be one of the primary factor for the business houses who provide these kind of services.
In fact, that question throws up an opportunity perhaps also for India, Sachin. We've been looking about outsourcing. It started with IT outsourcing, BPO, all of this started. The more and more stuff like this takes off, there's a great case for India to make that a lot of these data centers and other can come in India, and you can have people in India remotely managing services for people all over the world. It becomes a major additional source of revenue for the country.
Definitely, not only for the country, but also for giving people the job opportunities. And you have to create new jobs. The IT sector employs millions of people, but don't forget we have tens of millions of people who are working on farmland and areas that are not so productive. So these are all avenues where people can show their skill sets. These are all different new ever-evolving revenue models for businesses, for individuals to take up jobs. I think India should really tap into that, and in the next 5 to 10 years, this really could be a great source of job creation as well as wealth creation.
So is that the way a company like Microsoft would view it as well, that a lot of these services will therefore be hosted and managed out of countries like India? And could there be a political backlash to that?
I don't know about the political backlash, but I think absolutely true. I think, if you think about India, India has out of the world the second most number of developers, software developers in the world. And actually, when you think about mobile applications, a significant majority of mobile applications that are used around the world are actually developed in India. right? And so you think about all of the businesses that could be created based on this ecosystem, and all the jobs that are created by what this change can mean is tremendous. And it's actually something that we want to make sure that we help and spur, make sure the tools are out there, make sure there's enough education, and that people see this as an opportunity to further themselves and build a career, and really sort of drive forward.
Do you agree that is this a business opportunity for the country as a whole?
Absolutely. In fact, if you look at data center hosting business worldwide, the statistics says that it is close to $150 billion market. In India, it is just $2.6 billion. So there is a great opportunity for the business houses. And look at from the consumer perspective, we do have a lot of content with us, which is purely user-generated content, but we do not have any mechanism to put up that content on the cloud and maybe make a business model out of it. If you have a great photograph which you think this can really sell, but how do you really sell that photograph? With cloud coming in, with this kind of application coming in, you would be able to actually sell your user-generated content. So individual can also become an entrepreneur. So there is a business model for everyone.
Okay, one more question let me take. Ravi Sharma, how does a cloud customer protect himself from vendor lock-in? Let me aim that at you. Basically, the concern is that let's say you are going with a particular vendor, Microsoft or anybody else. Does that mean he's locked in? He can't go with somebody else? What if he starts getting bad services?
Yeah, I think, so from our perspective, what we've been trying to do is support as much open standards as is possible, right? So there's a lot of open standards out there, from internet protocols and internet standards like XML. So I won't do the litany of names, but there's all those open standards out there. And from our perspective, we just want to support all those and make sure that we're supporting the push for them and making that easy. So if people say, hey, I want to change a cloud provider, I want to move from here to here, as long as we're all supporting those open standards, you can clearly move. So we're going to try to make that as easy as possible.
In mobile industry, consumer were locked in with the telecom operator for many, many years. But with government bringing MNP, now all the consumers are free. They can really change the service provider if they do not like the services. I'm sure in times to come, with cloud computing coming in, maybe in future, perhaps we will have the same kind of portability from one cloud to another cloud. Who knows?
But how's that going to actually work? Let's say I've got all of my stuff hosted with a particular provider. I don't like it. You have to then get the entire data back, move it somewhere.
I really don't know. As of now, number portability for mobile industry is very seamless. Maybe the technology will provide that kind of solution in future, where changing your vendor from one cloud to another cloud would be seamless. You never know.
Okay, let me just take one final question. It's from Kunal Rao. He says, what would be the business case of this for a large enterprise which may have already got a lot of investment in an IT? So this is actually one other category. So I understand for a small business which was not able to do it. But what about it's a really giant corporation that has a massive IT department? Does cloud computing still make sense for them?
Yeah, no, I think it does, and we've seen a number of examples.
What if you've already invested in your ERP or CRM or whatever it is? It's already an investment you made. Then why would you want to change it?
Yeah, sometimes those things will come end of life, and you'll have an opportunity to say, I need some new functionality, I need to do something else. So for one example, we've seen companies that are limited to a few geographies. They want to expand into new geographies they haven't been in, a new footprint. So how can I use the cloud so I can provide that service to some new employees that I want in Africa, right? I may be an Indian company, I want to expand into Africa, but I don't want to put all the capital expenditure into it. Let me use the cloud in order to build my business in Africa for a period of time until I get it up and running, and then I can figure out what I want to do. So I may have that connect back to the infrastructure already invested, but also have the opportunity for growth.
Would you like to add to that?
Yeah, sure. In fact, all the investment that has been done, one can now we have the opportunity to leverage that investment and make a business model out of the same investment. IT departments have been a cost center for ages. Now there is an opportunity for them to make that as a profit center. They can take that entire investment to the cloud and sell it as a service or as an infrastructure or as a platform, because they have already invested.
And I think
to the smaller
enterprise being either or. I mean, if you have a large investment, there are many ways to milk it still.
Yeah.
And once you've, like you said, reached end of life, you've got to add on new services, new areas, new people to target. You can keep building on. So I don't think it's so clearly segregated, and the large ones will lose out because of the investments made. Any investment in IT will pay dividends. Now, it may not be exponentially high dividends, but it'll still give you benefits. You can just build on it. So I don't think it's a case of really cutting your losses, etc.
Okay, fine. I'm going to end by perhaps getting each of you to look into a crystal ball. If you look out 4 or 5 years, how do you see the computing scenario if cloud computing really sets in? How do you see it actually working on the ground, and the extent to which the various categories we've been talking about, how they could be actually finding their lives transformed? Whom do I get to go first? Sachin, why don't I get you to go first? Crystal ball gazing, 5 years out.
I see the future evolving in the following way, Vikram. So the large city centers in India, in this country, are quite on the threshold of getting good connectivity because they're demanding better quality services and high data speed, etc. What's going to happen is that the government's commitment of connecting 250,000 village headquarters with high-speed broadband is going to really be the superhighway or the skeleton that we've going to now create, and everybody, including private enterprise, will be able to ride on that and provide services. So the costs will come down. The government has earmarked a whole lot of money to deploy these resources to get that last mile connectivity. And once you have wireless connectivity of the magnitude that we are talking about, not just broadband in notional sense, but in the real sense, that is going to increase the demand. And like I said earlier, if it's content that's local, it's vernacular, easy to access and cheaper, you will see the internet penetration, the broadband penetration, as people have said, increases the GDP by 1.4%. Every 10% increase in the broadband penetration increases the country's GDP 1.4%. It's a huge leverage for us if we can really build on it. So I see technology as being a great catalyst to encourage internet proliferation, and today's 8% internet penetration rate could very well be 30, 40, 50% in next 4 or 5 years.
Especially if lots and lots of 3G handsets are actually out there, because that's when you can get the internet to a large number of people.
But the only way it will have that is through wireless, by the way.
Yeah,
Same
wireless
thing with
and
the
handheld
difference
devices.
If you go back in time, the wireline landline that we had was 1-2% teledensity. The minute wireless came in, now teledensity is 70% almost. So internet is the same. 8% of India is connected through internet via wirelines. The minute we go wireless, then you will have a quantum jump. It has to be that way.
Yeah. The way I look at it, like mobile phone, which is the largest screen in India today, 750 million subscriber, and with 3G and broadband connectivity in between, and cloud on the other side, I see a great future for all the IT services and the business houses as well as for the consumer. Because you have got all the elements that are working very well for you.
Okay, final thoughts from you?
I think,
crystal ball gazing?
yeah, I think we're going to see a growth of consumer applications like we've never seen. I think on the commercial side, we're going to see big advances on public cloud. We're going to see private clouds also come in, and probably more, I think, will be very interesting. I don't think it'll be just limited to handheld devices. I think we're going to see the cloud impact handheld devices, medium-sized screen sets like a PC, and then big screens like this, like the TV, I think will also be impacted. And we can't even imagine the services that are coming.
All right, it looks like exciting times ahead for all of us. Thank you so much for joining us to perhaps shed some light on this entire concept, and we're all looking forward to seeing all of these services rolling out over the next few years, and especially broadband getting to everyone in the country. Thank you all so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.